Real Madrid are falling apart. And the best part of all, no rival is doing this to them. Barcelona isn't doing it, although we've certainly helped. UEFA isn't doing it. Not the referees who have pampered them for years. No, Real Madrid are destroying themselves, from within, with their own hands, with their own ego. Because while the football world moves forward, Madrid is stuck in a schoolyard fight between two groups of fans who can't stand each other, the Vinicius camp versus the Mbappe camp. Two armies of supporters battling it out on social media while their team wins absolutely nothing. 2 seasons without titles. 2 seasons of excuses. 2 seasons watching Barcelona take everything they wanted with football, with authority, with humility. And today, on Barça Cracks, we are going to explain exactly why this broken, divided, and directionless Madrid is the most satisfying spectacle we have witnessed in years. There is a saying in football, great clubs are built from within, while they are also destroyed from within. And Real Madrid right now is the most perfect, most complete, and most satisfying example of that we have seen in years. Because while you watch this video, at this exact moment, there are thousands of Madrid fans fighting among themselves on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, in YouTube comments arguing over whether the problem is Vinicius Jr. or whether the problem is Kylian Mbappe. 2 sides, 2 armies, 1 certainty: Madrid are winning absolutely nothing. And here is the greatest irony of all. This is the same club that for years sold us the image of perfection. The biggest club in the world, they said. The home of the best players on the planet, they said. The place where champions come to shine and to win. And now that club has 2 of the most expensive and high-profile players in the world sharing a dressing room, and the result has been a season to forget. No Copa del Rey, no La Liga, humiliatingly eliminated from the Champions League by Bayern Munich, a team that exposed them without mercy and without hesitation. And as if that weren't enough, with Barcelona growing, dominating, and winning titles while they watch from the sidelines, that same Madrid that loved to talk about greatness will have to form a guard of honor for Barcelona in the Clásico, to applaud while the Catalans lift another title. And that, friends, is priceless. But the results aren't even the worst of it. The worst is what is happening on the inside. Because this Real Madrid dressing room is rotting from within, and everyone knows it, even if nobody at the club wants to admit it. Kylian Mbappe arrived as the Messiah, as Cristiano Ronaldo's successor, as the greatest promise in world football. The same man who now turns up week after week with injuries that are never quite serious. Muscular discomfort, fatigue, minor physical issues that mysteriously keep him away from the pitch, but somehow don't prevent him from flying to Italy to see Esther Exposito. Don't stop him from going out to dinner or relaxing on a yacht. Don't stop him from being perfectly fine outside of football, because Mbappe's head is somewhere else entirely. Mbappe is already thinking about the World Cup. He's already mentally preparing for the tournament that truly matters to him. Real Madrid, for him, is just the launch pad, the shop window, the place he turns up to collect his salary while waiting for the competition he actually cares about. And all of Spain knows this, even if the Madrid media don't dare say it out loud. And then there is Vinicius Jr., the other protagonist of this circus, a player we have seen absolutely everything from. Fights on the pitch with opponents, with referees, with his own teammates, with anyone who crosses his path. The provocative goal celebrations that spark conflict in every stadium he visits. The constant taunting of fans that instead of motivating the team ends up turning half of Europe against him. And the tears. The epic Vinicius tears whenever things don't go his way. When he gets substituted, when he loses the ball, when the match isn't going in his favor. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, no, on the other side of Spain, on the other side of Europe, Barcelona, our Barcelona. A renewed squad full of hungry young players, with players who embrace each other when they win and support each other when they lose. A group that plays real football with ideas, with a system, with identity, a genuine family on the pitch that is a joy to watch, a team that wins titles, that competes. That does the exact opposite of what Madrid do. That contrast is what we are going to break down today. Because when Madrid falls, it needs to be documented. This moment needs to be preserved for history. And we need to understand exactly how a club with so much money, such a famous name and so much power has ended up destroying itself with its own hands. To understand Real Madrid's civil war, you first have to understand how the two factions were formed, because this didn't appear out of nowhere overnight. It has history, it has context, and it has a great deal of ego involved. When Cristiano Ronaldo left Real Madrid in 2018, he left an enormous void, a void that no player has ever truly filled. Eden Hazard arrived as the chosen one to do it and ended up being the most expensive and most useless signing in the club's history. Injury after injury, match after match without performing, the Belgian became a shadow of the player he was at Chelsea. And in that star-shaped vacuum, in that total absence of a player capable of making the Bernabeu vibrate, a young, slim Brazilian kid appeared, with long legs and a huge smile. Vinicius Jr. And here is the key to everything. The Madrid fans who have been following the club for years, the ones who watched Vinicius arrive at 18 barely knowing how to shoot properly, who saw him miss goal after goal, who endured entire months of the Brazilian's scoring drought. Those fans have an emotional bond with him that cannot be bought or sold. They watched him grow. They watched him transform. They watched him go from being the Brazilian who can't score to being the decisive player in 2 Champions League finals. And that creates an incredibly powerful connection. Because when you watch someone develop right in front of your eyes, when you've suffered with them and then celebrated with them, that player becomes yours. He becomes part of your story as a fan. And when someone comes along later and starts criticizing that player, questioning him, pushing for him to be dropped, the reaction is visceral, defensive, emotional. But then Mbappe arrived, and that's when everything started. Kylian Mbappe arrived at Real Madrid in the summer of 2024 as the most anticipated signing of the past decade. Ronaldo's successor, they said. The best player in the world of the future, they said. And with him came an enormous wave of new supporters. Fans who weren't Madrid fans. Fans who had followed Mbappe from PSG and simply migrated with him as modern football nomads do. The same people who were PSG fans before and who tomorrow will follow whatever club Mbappe signs for next. And those two groups, the Vinicius FC and the Mbappe FC as they're known on the internet, clashed from day one. Because at Madrid there is no room for two sons in the same system. There never has been. And history has always proven it. There is a third group worth mentioning. The rational Madrid fans. The ones who aren't in either camp. The ones who simply want their team to win. The ones asking Florentino Perez to wake up, to bring in a proper central midfielder, to strengthen the defense, to do something. Because they've spent 2 years watching what looks like the best squad on paper completely fail to function on the pitch. That third group exists, but on the internet, no one listens to them. Because the internet runs on drama. And the drama at Madrid right now is Vinicius versus Mbappe. Let's be fair. Let's hear the arguments from both sides. We'll start with Vinicius FC because they have valid points, even if it pains us at Barcelona to admit it. The most powerful argument Vinicius's fans have is simple and undeniable: trophies. This kid has helped Real Madrid win 2 Champions Leagues. 2, not 1, 2. He was in both finals and contributed something decisive in both. In 2022, he scored in the final against Liverpool. In 2024, he was named the best player in the competition by UEFA. That cannot be ignored. That cannot be erased by league statistics or tactical analysis. Those are concrete facts, historic moments that will be written in stone forever. And there is something else his fans point out, quite rightly. Vinicius joined Madrid at 18 and essentially grew up there. He is almost a homegrown player. He has a connection with the club, with the shirt, with the badge that star signings arriving from elsewhere so often simply don't have. When he wins, he cries. When he loses, he hurts. And the fan base values that. They value it enormously. But let's be honest about what the Vinicius fans are really arguing beyond the emotion. The central argument is this: Madrid had a winning formula. Vinicius functioned perfectly when he had a classic number 9 or a box-to-box attacking midfielder beside him. With Benzema in 2022, the connection was magical. One created, the other finished. One moved into space, the other arrived in the box. In 2024 with Bellingham, it was different, but equally effective. Bellingham arrived from deep, Vinicius generated danger out wide, and the team flowed. The problem is that Mbappe arrived, and Mbappe occupies the same spaces as Vinicius, the same channels, the same zones, and suddenly the Brazilian doesn't know where to move, doesn't know where to show up. And instead of adapting, instead of reinventing himself, Vinicius started to get frustrated, started to argue, to fight with opponents on the pitch, to glare at referees, to protest every foul, to do the exact opposite of what a team fighting to win needs. And this is where even Vinicius's own fans have to be honest with themselves. Because one thing is defending a player based on his track record, something else entirely is ignoring his attitude problems. This player has a temperament that has generated more problems than solutions. He has been involved in controversies with opponents, with rival fan bases, with journalists. According to multiple reports, he played a role in the departure of managers from the club. Xabi Alonso, for example, according to various sources, encountered internal resistance from several players who were not willing to change their habits, and Vinicius was the most vocal of that group. That is a serious problem, because when you are a player saying, "I've won Champions Leagues doing it this way, don't ask me to change," you are putting your own ego ahead of the collective. And in a dressing room already overflowing with enough egos to fill a stadium, that is fuel for a fire. And what hurts neutral Madrid fans the most is this. Even when Vinicius isn't scoring goals and isn't winning matches, he still carries himself like the king of the world. And over time, that wears people out. It wears out the fan base, it wears out his teammates, and it wears out the board. And when a player exhausts everyone around him without delivering results on the pitch, the clock starts ticking. If you've been enjoying Real Madrid's disaster as much as I have, hit like, subscribe to Barça Cracks, and turn on notifications, because let's be clear, we're not destroying Madrid. They're perfectly capable of doing that themselves. We're just here with the popcorn, recording everything. Now let's hear the other side, Mbappe FC. And we have to acknowledge that their main argument is the hardest one to counter in football. Kylian Mbappe scores goals, lots of goals, 40 or more per season, European Golden Boot, in what many consider his worst season at Madrid. That is absurd. That is from another planet. And the question Mbappe's fans ask is a fair one. How can you blame the man who scores 40 goals? How do you bench someone who is the top scorer in all of Europe? In football, the hardest thing to do is score goals. And Mbappe does it systematically, consistently, relentlessly. That cannot be ignored. But here is the problem, and this is something even the most honest Mbappe fans eventually admit if you push them hard enough. The goals are real, but football is not just about goals. And when you look at PSG right now without Mbappe, the team is in the best moment of their entire history. Luis Enrique built something collective, where the goals are shared between Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Doué, and several others, and they are winning everything. Without Mbappe, the man who was supposedly their greatest player of all time. That is an enormous signal. A signal that Madrid fans don't want to see, but it's there, shining like a neon sign. That Mbappe, for all his goals, makes the teams that have him worse as a collective. That his style of play, his tendency to drift into the left channel where Vinicius already is, his habit of dropping deep to receive the ball in areas where he creates no real danger, his lack of timing when arriving into the box, in crucial moments, all of it does damage. There is a moment that has gone viral countless times, and that perfectly summarizes everything. Luis Enrique trying to explain to Mbappe using the Michael Jordan analogy why he needed to press, why he needed to defend, why collective work was more important than individual brilliance. And Mbappe listening, nodding, and then going out onto the pitch and doing exactly the same thing as always. That tells you everything you need to know about the Frenchman's tactical intelligence. Mbappe has two primary weapons that set him apart: his pace and the power of his shot. Those are his tools. And to use those tools, he needs space. Space in behind defenders. Space to run into, to chase depth, to arrive in the box at full sprint and finish. But what he does constantly is the opposite. He drops deep to receive in congested areas where he has no room. He tries to dribble in tight spaces where he is not at his best. He drifts into the same zones as Vinicius, creating a tactical bottleneck that makes the whole team suffer. And there is another detail that is simply unforgivable for someone with his pace. Mbappe is the fastest player on the pitch in virtually every match he plays. With that speed, he could stand 1.5 meters off the last defender and still get there first. But instead, Mbappe is constantly getting caught offside because he insists on staying glued to the centre-back's shoulder. For a player with his pace, that is an elementary tactical error that someone at his level simply should not be making. Now, to be fair, Mbappe does have something going for him when it comes to conduct. He doesn't cause the kind of scenes Vinicius does. He doesn't get into confrontations with opponents on the pitch. He doesn't shoot daggers at referees in the same brazen way. For all the behind-closed-doors talk of him being a dressing room dictator, based on what we can observe publicly, Mbappe is a professional in terms of his visible behavior. That is a point in his favor. But 2 seasons, 2 complete seasons, enough time for 2 players to develop an understanding, for a system to adapt, for an attacking partnership to find a way to coexist. And it hasn't happened. When Mbappe is fit, Vinicius performs below his level. When Vinicius is at his best, it's almost always because Mbappe isn't there. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And with that data on the table, it is very hard to argue that the answer is simply giving them more time. But here is the point nobody at Madrid wants to touch. The real problem at Real Madrid does not have a player's name. It has a president's name. And that name is Florentino Perez. This man has spent decades building Madrid on the same philosophy. Sign the best players in the world, put them together, and wait for the magic to happen on its own. Sometimes it works, and when it works, Madrid win Champions Leagues and everyone is happy. But when it doesn't work, the result is exactly what we are watching right now. A broken team, a divided dressing room, and a fan base that doesn't even know who to blame. And here is what the Madrid media refuses to analyze honestly. Florentino's financial management is a disaster. Because this man hasn't just destroyed the sporting balance of the club, he has compromised its finances in a way that cannot be fixed with one good transfer window. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The renovated Bernabeu, Florentino's pharaonic project. Over €1 billion invested in a stadium that is spectacular from the inside, nobody denies that, but which has saddled the club with a brutal level of debt. That money didn't fall from the sky. It was borrowed. Loans were taken out. Credit lines were signed that now have to be repaid with interest, month after month. And while that debt exists, the room to sign players, to invest in the squad, to compete financially with the biggest clubs in Europe shrinks dramatically. And how does Florentino try to recover that investment? With concerts, with tennis events, with boxing nights, with any kind of show that fills the stadium and generates revenue beyond football. The Bernabeu is no longer just a football ground. It is an events venue that needs to be active constantly to justify what it cost. And what Florentino sells as innovation is really a financial obligation dressed up as business vision. The result is that Madrid can no longer sign players the way they used to. The economic constraints are real, even if the board denies them. That explains not signing a midfielder when Modric and Kroos left. That explains not reinforcing a defense that has been a sieve for 2 seasons. That explains a great many things that would otherwise be completely inexplicable. Because Florentino spent everything on Mbappe. The biggest name on the market, the one who sells the most shirts, generates the most front pages, attracts the most sponsors, not the piece the team actually needed tactically, the brand, the product. Because before being a football president, Florentino is a businessman, and his decisions follow the logic of commerce far more than the logic of sport. And is any of this new? No. The BBC years proved it. Benzema, Bale, and Cristiano. How many times was it said that those three couldn't play together? How many front pages about egos that didn't fit, about Bale and Ronaldo treading on each other in the same channel, but they won. They won Champions Leagues, surrounded by refereeing controversy and historic offside decisions that the football world still talks about today. But in the end, they won. And when they won, all the noise disappeared. Because winning covers everything. That is the mental trap Madrid lives in, believing that a title erases structural problems. It doesn't erase them, it buries them. And sooner or later, they explode. What Madrid need is a midfielder who dictates the tempo, a solid defense and genuine structure. But signing all of that requires money. And the money is already committed to monthly repayments on a stadium that organizes concerts to avoid drowning in debt. Which, as Barcelona fans, we hope continues for as long as humanly possible. And so, we arrive at the question everyone is asking. Is there a solution for this Madrid? Can Vinicius and Mbappe ever coexist? Or has the water already gone too far under the bridge to ever come back? The honest answer is that nobody truly knows. But the data available to us is not encouraging. 2 complete seasons, hundreds of minutes playing together, and still not a single solid piece of evidence that these two players can be genuinely effective in the same team at the same time on a consistent basis. When Mbappe is there, Vinicius performs below his level. When Vinicius is at his best, it is almost always because Mbappe is absent. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And patterns in football tell the truth even when nobody wants to listen. The argument that they just need more time to adapt no longer holds water. 2 seasons is more than enough time for 2 players of that caliber to find a way to understand each other. 2 seasons is how long it took the MSN trident at Barcelona to build one of the greatest versions of the club in its entire history. If after 2 seasons Vinicius and Mbappe still haven't found their click, something structural is failing that goes far beyond adaptation. It is an ego war, a collapse so satisfying that we as Barcelona fans and everyone in the football world who has been on the wrong end of Madrid's decisions can now sit back and savor it. And this, friends, is only the beginning. And so, we close our breakdown of the most entertaining civil war in European football. Real Madrid, the club that sells itself as the greatest in the world, trapped in a fan feud while Barcelona lifts trophies. 2 seasons without winning anything meaningful. 2 stars who don't fit together. A president who never learns. And a fan base tearing itself apart. The best part of all is that nobody has to do anything for this to keep going. Madrid takes care of it themselves. We just have to be here to tell the story. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Hit like, subscribe to Barça Cracks, and turn on notifications. And if you think Mbappe and Vinicius together have done more damage to Madrid than all of Barcelona over the last 5 years, prove it with that like. It won't cost you anything. It's already costing Madrid quite a bit more. And always remember this. Titles aren't won by egos, they're won by teams. Barcelona knows that. Madrid is still learning.